Hey everybody, welcome to day 41. That's so fucking cool. So I'm walking around the parking lot right now after, going through this, going through day 2 of a landmark, and I wanted to give a brief overview of what today was because I had some very, very interesting experiences. So, oh my god, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. Hold on, check this out. The safari wagon. It has horns on it. Okay, that's really, really cool. So anyway, so the evening session begins, okay? And for those of you who do leadership facilitation, any type of training or anything like that, oftentimes of a 3-night course where you're going to be looking up personal development. Let's dig up some that's been going on in the past. What are you holding on to? Blah, 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 blah. Usually it's a very, very powerful session. For lack of better words, like junior trainer, I guess. There's a junior and a senior trainer. The junior trainer starts off by asking, so how many of you, there we go. So how many of you would like to share about, what you did over the break, which kind of had to do with like a little assignment that we all had, which, for me, it was like, the finding strengths and stuff. And I put that up on my Facebook and got some really great feedback. So thank you all. And there was like 10 or so hands that went up when he specifically asked about how many of you have called somebody to resolve some type of thing, and there was like 10 hands or so like that. So this is usually the moment when the facilitator will start ripping into the audience as a whole, and it's done from a place of love, it's done from a place of caring, it's done from a place of wanting to produce results by calling people out on their shit. Like, hey, you know what, you paid X amount of money here, you're here and you're not doing it, and like, this is your life, blah 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 blah. And so I've got to ask, like, I'm failing you guys as a trainer right now, so what is it that I'm doing, or what is it that, what's going on is effectively what the question is. And somebody else had gone up and said something pretty, general and vague, and then over my conversations with other people, I kind of knew that I was not the only person in the category that I was in, and I was like, this weekend's about, authenticity and inauthenticity and finding places where you're inauthentic. And I said, excuse me. I have been finding it difficult to find some specific places where I'm being authentic. Like, I obviously, if you're watching these things, you probably know that I don't have much of a problem with self-expression. And being inauthentic is primarily having a persistent complaint in the area of power, freedom, or self-expression. Well, I don't really have persistent complaints, and frankly, if you have a persistent complaint about something, we can change something. Jeez. And, sometimes the tools to change are not always there, which is why we go to these things. It's fantastic. And usually there's stuff where I'm like, yeah, I can dig right in, I can jump into it. And so I've been, almost every single break, I've been calling people, I've been talking to people, both inside of the people who are both in the forum with me, and then also calling people outside of the forum, people who've already done it, or people who just know me well. I talk to my parents, I talk with them, and I'm like, hey, is there anything that's like really incomplete? Like, I'm having some trouble, grasping with this. I feel like we've had these conversations, and really the conversation was like we had before, and it was so much more of a gift to them than it was for me taking away anything. Just kind of like reaffirming, like, hey, you know what, like, compassion and forgiveness is the place that I'm coming from, and there's nothing else there, And so getting back to my point, I was kind of saying, hey, I'm, in front of 125 people, I'm having some problems with identifying an area where I'm inauthentic, and the junior trainer was having a little bit of trouble kind of getting stuff out of me, or getting, getting questions, and I'm like sitting here like, dude, I'm open. I'm whatever you want right now. Because I don't want to waste the amount of time that I've invested and the amount of money that was invested into this. And I feel like I'm missing out on a really, really big opportunity because I see other people going through different changes and they're getting real value and stuff out of this. And then the senior trainer stepped in. The senior trainer steps in and he starts asking me some different questions, and he's like, hey, and then he leads in with, hey, you know, are you, you know, he asked me if I was an intelligent person. I'm like, I like to think so, maybe at times. And then he starts having, we start having a conversation about the human condition. And he basically is saying the human condition hasn't changed at all. And he's saying the exact same things that are happening now are the exact same things that were happening that are happening today. Or the exact same things that are happening today are the exact same things that were happening X amount of years, you know, like, you know, as far as, you know, humans go back, that we're still effectively in survival mode. And then he said the one thing that was just kind of like the tip-off for me to kind of jump in on it. And he said, you know, look at all the wars that we have going on today. We have more violence, more war going on than any other time, which, by the way, is patently untrue. There are so many statistics out there showing that we are safer today than we ever have been before. I live in San Diego, California. I mean, come on. I don't live in a survival type mentality. Like the idea of me almost dying because I, you know, have religion or don't have religion, or because I'm gay or I'm not gay, or whatever the case is kind of, it's so far removed. So then what he ends up doing, he starts pulling the audience, which, by the way, is a great way to, you know, kind of basically kind of start dividing sides. He starts pulling the audience. So what you're saying is that there's less racism in the world than there is today. And I said, well, I didn't exactly say that. So how many of you have been affected by racism? And of course, a whole bunch of hands go up. You know, of course that's the case. He's like, and then you're going to say, you know, look at these people. They've firsthand seen war because there's veterans in the room, you know, more power to you. Yes, that's awesome. But those are also anecdotal stories. And I said, yeah, I'm not saying that it's not there, but I am saying that the numbers show that that's not the case, that we do live in a safer society than we have previously. So then, as he keeps going on talking about like how the human condition effectively has not changed whatsoever, he then goes into the center of the room, he turns his back on me, and then just starts talking to the other side of the audience entirely. For the next 25 minutes, he does not look at me whatsoever as we're standing there, after he had already said, are you ready to have an adult conversation about this? And then I said, yeah. 25 minutes later, he completely stopped this adult conversation and basically just kind of started facilitating with somebody else midway. And so part of my being authentic for tomorrow is going to kind of be calling him out on, hey, you know what? That wasn't being authentic at all. And you know, if we want to talk about more things, the fact that the junior trainer is reading every single line, and that's not hyperbole, by the way, every single line is even more indicative of something that you could easily point to as being inauthentic. Now, that's not necessarily for my place to be saying or anything else like that, but for him to open up and engage in a conversation, for the senior trainer who's been doing this 20 plus years to open up a conversation with me, interrupting the junior trainer's facilitation and say, hey, do you want to have an adult conversation? And then when he starts getting some contradictions about, hey, you know, I'm not saying there isn't war, but there is a lot less than 100 years ago. The human condition has changed. We're not dying in mass from polio or smallpox. Like, the human condition is evolving. And for him to effectively just turn his back on it is really not effective communication. That's not authentic communication. And I'm absolutely blown away so far by this. And I am been walking around the parking lot now for 10 minutes explaining this, if for nothing else than my own personal documentary of I get to invite as many people as possible. And for also, here's my being authentic, because I did say that I would invite other people. Trainers and facilitators, I invite you to go check out Landmark for the reason of looking at a different style of facilitation. I can't pass any judgment yet as to whether it is a more effective or less effective thing, but from what I've seen, everybody else, from the demonstration that I was given tonight, has just shut down a number of other people in the room from wanting to speak up. Because there are other people in the room who are in the exact same position that I am and who will not be saying anything. And I see the audience when I'm saying, you know, hey, you know what, there are stats that show there is less violence in the world today than there was 100 years ago, or than there was 500 years ago. And I see the shaking heads, and guess what? Part of my authenticity is I don't really care, because that's what the fact is. And that's me having freedom, power, and self-expression, and not being shut down because people are choosing to deny certain things that are going on in the world or that aren't going on in the world. So this has been my day 2 of Landmark Forum Review, and excuse me, I hope that this gets uploaded in time, and I will tag the people who I'm actively engaging in conversations with this, because prior to coming here, and even still being here, has been a process of talking with other people and from opinions, getting positive opinions from people whose opinions I trust and respect in the area of personal and professional development. So it's been very, very, very interesting to me. And by the way, today, you know, during all of the sessions, I was sitting up in first or second row. I was making, my phone wasn't gone entirely. I was making active efforts to, even if it was cold, not to close my arm, not to like fold my arms or anything, to sit forward, lean in, be attentive, everything that I could. So by the end of it, nobody could possibly say that I didn't give absolutely everything into gaining as much as possible out of attending for this weekend that, you know, 3 days are being invested into. So if you're still watching this, bravo to you. You fucking rock. And you guys have a great night, man. Just make it good, whatever it is. Like, what's good in life? So yeah, I guess more to come tomorrow, and it should be fun and interesting.